Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Streamline English. I hope you are having a peaceful day. Get comfortable and take a slow breath in and out. Tonight, we are going on a long journey across deserts, over mountains, through ancient cities. You don't need to understand every word. Just listen and let the story carry you, like a traveler carried along an ancient road. Have you ever stopped to think about how, thousands of years ago, long before there were planes, or trains, or telephones, or the internet, a beautiful piece of silk could begin its life in a quiet workshop in China and end up, years later, being worn by a wealthy person far away in Europe, on the other side of the world? There were no fast ships crossing the oceans yet. There were no engines, and yet, somehow, goods and ideas and inventions and even religions traveled across thousands of miles, connecting peoples who had never met. How was the ancient world connected across such vast distances so long ago? The answer lies in one of the most amazing achievements in human history, the Silk Road, and this is its story. If you enjoy learning English through calm history like this, please subscribe to Streamline English. It helps us keep these stories coming. Thank you, my friend. Let us begin with a small surprise. The Silk Road was not actually a single road at all. When you hear the word Silk Road, you might imagine one long, straight path stretching from east to west. But the truth is more interesting than that. The Silk Road was really a vast network, a great web of many connected routes, paths, and tracks crossing an enormous stretch of the world. A network is a system of many connected lines or paths. These routes wound their way across deserts, over high mountains, through green valleys, and from one trading city to the next. This great web of routes connected the lands of the Far East, like China, all the way across the middle of Asia to the lands of the Middle East and Europe. It stretched for thousands and thousands of miles, and it stayed in use, in one form or another, for well over 1,000 years. And here is another surprise. The name Silk Road is actually a fairly modern one. The people who traveled these routes long ago did not call it that. It was given the name much later because of the most famous and precious good that traveled along it, a good that the entire world desired, and that, for a long time, only one country in the world knew how to make: silk. Silk is a beautiful, soft, shining cloth. To people in the ancient world, it was a wonder. It was light, smooth, and gorgeous, far finer than the rough wool and plain cloth most people wore. The wealthy and the powerful in faraway lands desired silk above almost anything else. They would pay enormous amounts of money for it. And for a very long time, there was only one place in the entire world that knew how to make it: China. The Chinese had discovered, long ago, that a certain kind of small creature, the silkworm, spun fine threads that could be carefully gathered and woven into this magnificent cloth. And the Chinese guarded this secret very, very closely. The method of making silk was one of the most valuable secrets in the world, kept hidden for centuries. Other lands could buy the finished silk and treasure it, but they could not make it themselves. They did not know how. This made silk incredibly valuable and incredibly desired, and so it became one of the great engines of trade. Traders could buy silk in the East, carry it across the long, dangerous routes to the West, and sell it for a fortune. The hunger for silk and for other precious goods is what kept the great roads alive, year after year, century after century. But to carry these goods across thousands of miles of harsh and empty land, that required courage, endurance, and one very special animal. Imagine the journey. To travel the Silk Road, you had to cross some of the harshest land on earth. Vast, burning deserts where there is no water for days and days and where sandstorms can swallow whole caravans. Towering mountains, cold and dangerous, with narrow, freezing passes. It was a brutal, exhausting, and perilous journey. Many travelers did not survive it. The traders traveled together in large groups, for safety, called caravans. A caravan is a group of travelers and animals journeying together, especially across a desert. And to carry their heavy goods across the burning sands, they relied on a remarkable animal, the camel. The camel was perfectly suited for this hard journey. It could carry heavy loads. It could walk for a very long time across the desert without needing water. It could endure the heat, the cold, and the blowing sand. The camel was so important and so well suited to crossing the seas of sand that people sometimes called camels the ships of the desert. Without them, the great trade across the deserts would hardly have been possible at all. And here is something fascinating about how the trade actually worked. Most traders did not travel the entire length of the Silk Road themselves. The whole journey, from one end to the other, was simply too long and too dangerous for any one person. Instead, the goods were passed along, like a relay. A trader might carry silk for one part of the journey and sell it at a great market city. There, another trader would buy it and carry it further west and sell it again, and so the silk passed from hand to hand, from city to city, traveler to traveler, slowly making its way across the world. This meant that great trading cities grew up all along the routes, busy, wealthy, colorful places where merchants from many different lands met, bargained, and exchanged their goods. These cities became some of the richest and most exciting places in the entire ancient world. But silk and spices were not the most important things that traveled along these roads. Something far more powerful moved along them too. Of course, many wonderful goods traveled the Silk Road. From the east came silk and fine porcelain and tea and spices and paper. From the west came gold and silver, glass, wool, horses, nouches, and precious stones. People enjoy treasures they could never have made or found at home. But the most important things that traveled the Silk Road were not things you could hold in your hands at all. They were ideas. Think about what happens when people from completely different worlds meet, again and again, year after year, to trade. They do not only exchange goods, they exchange knowledge, they share stories, they learn each other's customs, they carry inventions from one land to another. They spread new ways of thinking, new arts, new beliefs. And this is exactly what happened along the Silk Road on an enormous scale. The road became a great river of ideas, flowing in both directions, connecting and changing the civilizations at both ends. Inventions made in one part of the world slowly spread to others. Knowledge that took one people centuries to discover could be shared with another. The Silk Road was, in a sense, one of the first great information networks in human history, a way for the whole connected world to learn from itself. And among the most powerful ideas that traveled these roads were the great religions and philosophies of the world. As traders and travelers journeyed along the Silk Road, they carried their beliefs with them. And so, religions that began in one part of the world slowly spread to others, carried along the trade routes. One of the great religions of Asia, for example, began in one land, and then spread along the Silk Road, over the mountains and across the deserts, into China and beyond, eventually shaping the spiritual life of hundreds of millions of people across many countries. Without the connections of the Silk Road, the world's beliefs, arts, and cultures would look completely different today. Inventions traveled too. The art of making paper, which began in the East, slowly spread westward along these routes, eventually reaching the rest of the world. And paper, of course, would go on to transform how human beings record knowledge, tell stories, and share ideas. And other technologies, arts, and pieces of knowledge made similar long journeys. So you see, the Silk Road did not just make some merchants rich. It quietly shaped the entire course of human civilization. It connected the great cultures of the world and allowed them to learn from one another, to trade with one another, and to grow together. Much of what each civilization became, it became partly because of these connections. Of course, not everything that traveled the road was good. Along with goods and ideas, sometimes sickness traveled too, carried unknowingly by travelers from one land to another. The very thing that connected the world could also, at times, spread its dangers. This is one of the deep truths of being connected. The same roads that carry blessings can also carry hardship. But on the whole, the Silk Road was one of the great gifts of the ancient world, a vast bridge between distant peoples. For well over 1,000 years, the Silk Road flourished, but eventually, slowly, its great age came to an end. There were several reasons. As time went on, the powerful empires that had kept the routes safe began to change and weaken, and the roads became more dangerous. But the biggest reason was this: the world found a new way to travel and trade. Sailors and explorers developed better and better ships and learned to cross the great oceans, and it turned out that carrying goods by sea, in large ships across the water, was often faster, cheaper, and safer than carrying them by camel across thousands of miles of desert and mountain. And so gradually, trade shifted from the land routes to the sea routes. The great caravans grew fewer, the busy desert cities grew quieter, and the long age of the Silk Road slowly faded into history. But its legacy never faded. The connections it created, the ideas it spread, the cultures it brought together, these had changed the world forever. And today, we look back on the Silk Road with wonder, as one of humanity's first and greatest acts of reaching out across the world to one another. Long before the modern world, human beings were already finding ways to connect across every desert and mountain that stood between them. The longing to reach one another is one of the oldest forces in history. The story of the Silk Road teaches us something beautiful about human beings. We are, by our deepest nature, connectors. Even thousands of years ago, even with deserts and mountains and oceans between us, even without any modern technology, people found ways to reach across the world to one another, to trade, to share, to learn, to connect. The desire to exchange with other people, to learn from those who are different from us, is one of the oldest and most powerful forces in all of human history. And the Silk Road teaches us that connection makes us richer, not just in goods, but in ideas, in knowledge, and in understanding. When cultures meet and shares, both sides grow. Each learns things it could never have discovered alone. The whole world becomes wiser and more wonderful when its many peoples are connected. So tonight, why do I tell you this story? Because you, my friend, are walking your own Silk Road right now. By learning English, you are building a road, ideas, stories, and cultures from all over the world. Every word you learn is another stretch of that road, reaching outward, connecting you to millions of people you have never met in countries you may never visit. The traders of old crossed deserts and mountains, hand to hand, city to city, to connect their world. You are doing something just as wonderful. With every English word, you are reaching across the distance, across languages, across borders, to join the great connected human conversation. You are building a bridge between yourself and the whole wide world. So keep building your road, my friend, one word at a time. Where it will carry you and who it will connect you to may be more wonderful than you can yet imagine. If you enjoyed this journey, please give it a like and subscribe to Streamline English. It truly helps us grow. And tell me in the comments, what part of history would you like me to explore next? Until next time, my friend, keep connecting, keep learning, and have a peaceful day.